You're listening to the Two Sleuth Podcast, all about the business of dentistry, hosted by yours truly, Greg Essenmacher, a fixed full arch dental expert and founder of G&A Consult, speaking with industry leaders on the dental landscape from their perspective. Welcome back, everyone. Today on the Two Sleuth Podcast, I am thrilled because I have somebody I consider an expert, somebody that I knew of, but I didn't know personally. It's none other than Rob Laizure. So, Rob, why don't you introduce yourself? But before you even get to that, because nobody really cares about what you know until they know about what you can help them with. So, let's dive right in. You know, my lane is the full arch lane. So let's just start right there. What is the biggest challenge, obstacle, errors you see full arch doctors doing early on? Let's start there.
Yeah, early on, jumping into the deep end, it would just be managing expectations internally and with their patient, right? If they're just starting their first few fixed full arch cases, they're going to need some other doctors to help them, or a really good lab tech to help them to understand records, understand patient flow, how many visits is this going to be, understand cost and deliverables. You speak a lot about microfactors of trust, and if this doctor getting in cannot predict cost and time and outcome well to the patient and articulate it with confidence, with predictability, so that when the patient's done with treatment, if we were to ask that patient, were your expectations delivered upon? Right. And that's a key word, like expectation. You set the patient up to expect an outcome, and the patient, maybe some of them know about fixed full arch and what the process should be. They've been shopping around, but I would say a lot of patients don't really know that much. They're expecting the doctor to be the expert. So if you're just getting started, I mean, there's nothing wrong with that, but make sure you know cost, time, outcome, so that when the patient's done, they tell all of their friends, because that's what you want, right? The best
Yep.
avenue for growth is word of mouth growth, right? They go to their bridge club, or they're with their friends and they say, I look amazing. This is what it cost. And everything went according to plan. Whether the plan was 3 months long or 5 months long, I don't think that matters as much as in the patient's mind, everything went according to plan.
Well, and here's the thing, and you touched on it, right? So, and I like to say, if they go from where they were to where they are now, that change, that transformation is going to be noticeable. Whether they go back to work, church, synagogue, friends, neighbors, uncles, mothers, pictures, photographs, that transformation, whether it's in the next week, month, or year, it's going to be noticeable, and people will ask, and it's their perception of expectations being met. That's the
Yeah.
key. And at G&A Consult, we do the single sheet. The single sheet is simply listing out the steps of what's going to happen start to end. It starts with the consultation and it ends with not necessarily delivery of the final, because it ends with maintenance, right? Hybrid maintenance. People forget that last step. And everybody in the clinic understanding what are those steps. And it's just simple and laid out. I was just in clinic with one of our clients that we onboarded a few weeks ago. Everybody during that morning huddle could name it off, right? And it was giving out like gift cards, right? To those that could name off and were the first ones to jump in. It's so critically important to be able to hit and manage those expectations. And I love that you pointed that out. And having that just listed out, understood right from the get-go when you're getting into full arch is important. And even those that have been in it for a long time, because it will change the bullet points underneath each of the highlights of the steps, right? As you transition from analog to digital, right? The details will change, but the top level never changes, right? That they're coming in. Maybe the number of appointments will reduce, but what you're walking them through as far as flow, that never changes. And so I love that you pointed that out for sure. So tell me, in your experience, like that you've been in the industry, what, 19 years, 20 years, like 2
19
decades,
years.
about it. Yeah, a little bit longer than I have. You started out. So for folks that don't know who you are, right? So you actually started out, you co-founded FullContour.
Yep.
FullContour was one of those disruptors in the industry, right? That helped to establish digital, like as far as we knew, because I knew when I was with Neodent, we were like, who are these upstart guys, right? They're killing us. Then it was, okay, now we need to figure out how to usurp them and use them with clients of ours. And then it was acquired
Yep.
by 3Shape, right? I think it was in
Yes.
2020 or something like that. Now, tell me what you're doing now, right? Because this is so critically important that you're helping those solve problems when it comes to digital because clinicians, they're infamous for it. They see a new shiny toy, or you've got some really good manufacturing reps out there that sell a bill of goods or services, or they bring in digital too fast and they don't have the connecting dots from piece to piece, right? Am I right on that? Because that's what we see.
That's
And then
correct.
they turn to us and say, figure it out, solve it. So talk to me about that. And so my listening audience has an understanding of that piece.
Well, let's start with the fundamental thing that I think most all of us would agree is that digital will give you better outcomes or should give you better outcomes, right? The technology of scanning an object is clinically better than the technology of an alginate impression or PVS impression material. So, okay, we agree to that, that digital is more accurate, it's more repeatable, it's more reproducible. You don't have to retake impressions to grab records if something happened. You have a good digital scan that's accurate. So then the foundation you stand upon is better or should be better. But with digital comes complexity, right? And it can also be unforgiving, right? And so just talk about record taking, right? It all starts with good records, good iOS scans, which an iOS scan, intraoral scan is a surface scan. Think of it as a surface scan. You're scanning the surface of teeth, scanning the surface of tissue, right? And you use it for crown and bridge, we use it for implants. But then now implant location, implant coordinates. Where are the implants in the mouth intraorally? Photogrammetry as a category is highly accurate. It's really, really good technology. Photogrammetry is nothing more than implant coordinates. So you need photogrammetry and you need iOS scanning, the surface scans, and then you need to pair them together in your strategy of, okay, here's my records that I'm going to take. And now I have to give them to a lab and they have to be happy with my records. My records have to be meaningful. The lab has to be able to do things like 3-point alignment. If you don't know what 3-point alignment means, learn what 3-point alignment means and the importance of 3-point alignment. It's a simple concept of I have two objects in 3D space and I need to be able to align them, to bring them together and like mesh them together. Why do we need 3-point alignment? Is because you have your bite records, you have your photogrammetry scan, and you have your surface scans of your upper arch and your lower arch. And we need to create, someone called it the digital stack or the digital sandwich. This, all of these records have to be coordinated in 3D space accurately. And that's done by 3-point alignment of that data so that the bite is good. Because what you cannot do is send a kitchen sink of scans to your lab and say, I think I got it. And then your lab calls you and says, yeah, I've got 47 scans here, but you're missing the two most critical ones, and we can't start this case. So I think these are some of the frustrating phone calls between a doctor and a lab, a good lab that knows what they're doing, where the doctor's like, well, I sent you all the data. And the lab says, yes, but you're missing this data, right? So this is where I mentioned or digital can be unfriendly, and it's difficult to quote make it work if the digital workflow isn't respected and worked through properly.
Well, and what I'm hearing you say too, because you're talking on the technical side, right? Which I love. Don't get me wrong. I'm not a technical guy. People who listen to this program or have met me in Full Arch know that I don't speak technical. However, what you're talking about is being able to have the right information, right? And that communication apparatus between the lab because even it doesn't matter what systems you have in place, unless you have everything internal, including your designer, and he still, if he can walk across the room and say, no, you need to have this scan with these points to align all of the pieces that you're talking about, right? The 3-point alignment, which is great. I like to talk about the triangle offense and the triangle defense and Phil Jackson. We don't need to go down that road. We can have a hours. So we're there, right? Great. 11 rings, right? We can have an argument about who the best coach ever was in the NBA, but we don't have time to go down that path today. But here's the point that I'm trying to make is that it's important to have the right messaging, and it's not just like that we measure in Full Arch with our clients, right? It's not just having metrics for the sake of metrics. It's not just scans for the sake of having scans. It's having the right data, right? The right data that aligns to get you where you want to get to, and a message alignment, just like it's message alignment when it comes to marketing per se, right? So are you
Mm.
clearly articulating what it is you do? It's not the what in Full Arch, right? The what is the data scans. You can have all the scans in the world, but it's the why. Why are you scanning? So there's aligning to get the outcome you're looking for. It's the same in marketing. Like, it's the motivation of the patients. They don't care, right? And you'd shared this earlier, before we started the program. They don't care that you have all the latest and greatest technology. They care what it's going to do for them. Oh,
Correct.
so it's going to be more accurate when you put the prosthesis, when you put the fixed denture and screw it into my mouth. Oh, so it's going to last long, right? So talk to me a little bit about the whys to the patient, because you started
Yeah.
like alluding to it a little bit, but I'd like to transition a little bit into what that marketing message, or the message to the
Yeah.
patient, what they're going to receive, so that it can be utilized when they do make the investment in the technology, and why the digital, right? So answering that why digital from the
Yeah.
patient perspective, so they can leverage that in their USP, which we work with clients on. And marketing companies love calling it the UVP. Either way, the why to the patient, so that that can be communicated. We can have that part of the conversation now. Hey there, it's Greg Essenmacher, host of the Two Sleuth podcast and founder of G&A Consult. At G&A, we specialize in transforming full arch dental practices, teaching, coaching, and training teams to deliver an exceptional patient experience, from that first call to delivering final smiles. Whether you're a practice owner, a DSO executive, or a regional leader looking to expand your full arch program, boost same-store sales, or unlock the true profitability of full arch cases, we've got you covered. Ready to see how Full Arch can elevate your practice? Visit the show page or book a discovery call today. Let's turn your potential into results.
Love to dive into this. I'm a huge advocate of digital technology. However, I don't think the patient cares that much. I think they might care a little bit, but let's talk about things that I don't think the patient cares much about. The patient doesn't care whether or not you make the prosthetic in your clinic or you use a lab. What the patient cares about is that you, as the doctor, know best, and that you're going to take care of them, and that the outcome will be delivered. Whether you make it in your own kitchen or you outsource it to an external kitchen, I don't think the patient cares about that. The material science. The average patient has no idea what zirconium oxide is or what titanium. I mean, maybe they know what titanium is, but the biocompatibility of it, they don't know what osseointegration is, right? Like, the material science is also something the patient's like, doc, you know best. Your production process, like how you make something, 3D printing or milling and all that, although it's cool and some people like having those nerdy technical conversations, again, what's the outcome that the patient's going to get? So
Right.
I think
And
that's
it's just like with a car. Like, I'm not a car guy. I really don't care if you tell me like how and the why and the calipers and the size of the brake pads and all that when I go and get my brakes done. Just fix it. Just tell me the outcome, right? These are going to last longer. Get these tires because of this, right? So please, I didn't mean to interrupt, but like, I'm not a car guy. But there are a few percentage of people that want that information. Same in Full Arch, guys, right? It's the same in Full Arch. Please, please, please stop giving them all the details of why the contents and material of your prosthetic. They want to know, is it going to last longer? Right?
yes.
Please go ahead. I didn't mean to interrupt you, but like, this is a passion point of mine, and I've had these conversations. So, right, change your consultations. Stop talking to patients on such a technical level unless they're that technical person, which is a small percentage. Please go ahead, Rob.
So there's going to be this pot of gold at the end of the rainbow, and the rainbow is the process of how we get there. And let's call that pot
Yes.
of gold the outcome, right? We're going to take them from where they're at to where they want to be, and then they're going to end up there. What they're going to care about is, what did it cost me to get there? How many visits to the office? And how much time, right? And obviously, it's relative to the patient and the procedure that we're doing and what kind of healing time they need, and do they smoke or not, and all these things. But if you can be predictable and, all right, Mrs. Jones, it's going to take, here's step 1, here's step 2, here's step 3, and we're going to get you to this end result in this much time, and it's going to cost you this. Now, the promise of this end result could be, the foundation of the promise could be, by the way, we do make some parts of this process in house, like printing provisionals, right? So this could be something to the patient, right? We're going to give you a printed provisional, or provisional, so that you can test drive your this prototype prosthetic. And we do this to make sure that you are in love with it before we move you to the final prosthetic. And because we have 3D printing in house, we can give you a first prototype and a second prototype to make sure that you've fallen in love with this prototype appliance, so that when we move you to final, it's going to go right in, no adjustments, and it's going to be exactly what you fell in love with.
Mhm.
I think there's a moment that the patient will start to care about the fact that you maybe make something in house, because it affords you the ability to give them, a couple prototypes. Because if a doctor's using a lab, the lab's charging them for those prototypes, and maybe the doctor's a little bit like hesitant to do a second or a third prototype because there's now inflated cost structure involved. So it's really the outcome and the process to get to the outcome that the patient cares a lot about. And then let's talk about warranty, right? Like, okay, I'm going to pay all this money. And then what does 5 years look like? What does 10 years look like? And doc, how are you going to support me? Right? Like, what's the cost to replace this, Toyota Corolla that I just put in my mouth, right? Because it's a $20,000 treatment. And how long is it going to last? What's the warranty going to be? And the warranty could be related to whether or not the doctor pays an external lab or they make it themselves, right? Because the cost structure is different. So I think the patient cares most about the outcome, the cost and time to get there, and then the warranty after the fact. And meet their expectations, over deliver. They'll tell their friends, and then take care of them on their warranty and their checkups. And they'll still tell their friends, because that relationship is an ongoing beneficial relationship to the patient.
Well, and you hit on a point that I think is so critically important, and I speak in these terms often with clients that we have at GNA Consult, and it's the 3 aspects that are most important. It's time, talent, and treasure. They're all limited in scope, and you've talked on it, right? The time, what's the amount of time that it's gonna take from the start point to the end point of me getting delivered this final set of teeth and my brand new smile? The talent, and that talent that you're talking about, that's where the technology comes in, right? We have the talent to print in-house, to be able to give you that prototypes, to make sure you fall in love with the new set of teeth you're going to get. So we get to that final that we know is going to just fit right in. That's going to be amazing and beautiful. And I'm paraphrasing the words that you used, which also then comes into that warranty piece, which is the treasure, which is how much it's going to cost you, how much the outlay is, because I think you said the Toyota Corolla, right? So all 3 of those pieces, but it's the same when, clinicians make the investment in any type of digital, go from analog to digital, right? Because there's an investment in equipment and in training and just like it is when they make investments with coaching and consulting in order to get better at converting those cases as well, to develop their unique selling proposition and make sure that they're getting higher conversion rates on their marketing dollars. All of that is just in perfect alignment. And you touched on, I think it's so critically important to have that understanding. But it all starts with, I think, and this is the next point that I want to talk about, really with the leadership of the clinician. They don't have to have all the answers, but being
Mm.
open to, I can empower different team members with different aspects of this digital journey. Doesn't mean I have to cede authority. And this comes from 11 Rings, the book by Phil Jackson. And he talks about this, that giving away some of the power of different pieces of the process to
Mm.
convert it over and parallel it to dentistry, especially when going to digital dentistry. But the clinician, the leader, still has the authority. to be able to oversee it, right? Trust but verify. And so, in your experience at Rebel 3D, so what are you seeing as far as some of those pieces of individuals taking ownership in order to become expert, right? Master level or experts of any step in the process. You talked about iOS for that, the topography scan, and then for, the photogrammetry to make sure you're getting the right scans, and that data acquisition and the communication piece between lab or individuals that are doing design and in clinic to make sure that you're getting all the pieces of information that you need. So talk to me a little bit about that.
Yeah, the doctor for sure in the digital workflow needs to be an expert on what records are we taking, why are we taking them, and what are we doing with these records, and why are they important to deliver to the lab. I would say it's critical for the doctor to not be the only expert in what's critically important, because otherwise they'll paint themselves into a room and now they're the only one in the clinic that knows how to get the scans together and send them off to the lab. They should be investing, and I use that word very intentionally, investing time into one of their lead assistants that has some, digital savviness, and they're curious and they like, computers and figuring things out, and they want to learn, because then you need that internal ambassador who's saying, "Okay, doc, we got a checklist of all the digital scans that you got. Did you get this one and this one and this one and this one and this one?" Because they know they're going to deliver that sandwich of data to the lab to make it good. And this process of gathering your scans internally and then having someone that understands what records are we taking digitally, why are we taking them, why are they important, and we're going to give those to the lab. This is like the critical foundation to build internally before you decide to bring in a 3D printer or bring in a mill. Because that lab relationship and the data you give them, and when they say, "Hey, doc, we're missing a scan," and so then you got to get the right scan, like that's your learning so that the digital workflow works with the lab, right? Okay, so we do this, this, and this. We send it to the lab, they're happy, we get a prosthetic back, and everything's good. Or we get a provisional back, and things are now starting to get into a predictable workflow. Then bring in a 3D printer for printed prototypes and just start there. So now, and I would even say, let your lab be a part of that. Talk to them. Don't be shy about it. Just tell your lab, "Hey, we're going to print our prototypes and we're going to bring those in house because we want to be able to print a second or a third prototype to offer our patients some additional benefit. But don't worry, Mr. Lab, Mrs. Lab, we're going to send you the final prosthetic." If you do that and you have a smart lab, they're going to want to keep the business of the final prosthetic, and they will help you still, right? And so I think bringing in a 3D printer, training your staff, and getting in tune with that process, and the doctor not being the only one is critically important. At Rebel 3D, we're also positioned to help you. We have digital experts, dental technicians who've been designing for 15, 20, 25 years. They understand design, they understand printing, they understand manufacturing, and we can also help coach, teach, train, to steal your terminology, Greg, for not only for the doctor. I mean, doctors learn quickly, and I don't think that's really the issue. It's how is that digital knowledge transferred to their staff, and is the doctor training, or do they want an expert, digitally savvy technician to help train their staff for them, with them? Because that investment into this internal digital workflow in the clinic is critical. And the doctor needs at least one assistant that understands what's going on.
Well, and what you're describing as well is it depends on the vision of the clinician themselves. If it's going to be doctor dependent, it's not really a scalable model. And the clients that we're working with and continue to work with are looking at scalability, right? If it is doctor dependent, the doctor is the most expensive person, it
Yeah.
in the entire practice, period. I mean, you just look at
Yeah.
the hourly, right? And so when we start to look at those as we work with clinics and clients, right, and we look at parsing off the P&L parts of Full Arch from the rest of the general dentistry pieces, and we parse that out, that is very abundantly clear. And so what you're talking about just literally resonates and lands, and all of our clients that are listening certainly understand that for sure. Well, Rob, this is the part of the program all of our guests play a little something called What the Sleuth is Going On? It's 3 rapid
Oh,
fire questions. First thing that comes to mind, are you ready to play?
I guess I am.
All right. Question number 1, through reluctancy in his voice. What's the worst bad breath you've ever encountered?
Well, I don't see patients, so gosh, probably my wife because she's the only one to get close enough to smell the breath. But that's a terrible answer. You're probably gonna have to cut this out, otherwise I'm in trouble.
No
She'll never
cut.
see this.
No
She'll never
cutting
see
in
this episode.
post-production. Listen to this, all of look, to those that do the editing, no cutting that. All right, well, we'll make sure we send, like, a special clip to your wife for that one. All right, question number 2. If you could change one thing about your smile, what would it be?
Orthodontics. I have semi-straight teeth. I have a lot of asymmetry, to put it nicely. I do wanna get some orthodontics. I got treated for clear aligners as a part of FullContour. I did a free design on myself, but I needed, interproximal reduction. Didn't really wanna do that. So I'd probably go for, clear wire and bracket or maybe lingual braces, but I would go for ortho treatment because I'm not gonna grind on my teeth until I absolutely need to, right? So let's do ortho first.
All right, ortho it is. All right, question number 3. If you could go back and be the inventor of any dental product, and no, you can't choose your own, which one would you choose and why?
Uh, the iOS scanner. The iOS scanner, I think it's the digital camera of dentistry, right? And the iOS scanner has opened the door to a world of possibility that was not possible with conventional PVS impressions. The iOS scanner, I think it's the greatest innovation in dentistry in the last 100 years. I really do.
There are tens of thousands of people that absolutely agree with you, and probably hundreds of thousands if we actually talk to just the general public who really can't stand those goopy impressions and had the effect of having
Yeah.
too much of that material somewhere in their mouth at some point in time. I know I would be one of those people who have gagged on having a traditional alginate impression at one point in their life. Yeah, I mean, just the thought of that, like, literally, I have to, like, compose myself to finish. Rob, in the last few minutes here of this show, I want to respect your time and my listening audience. Some end up scuba diving, running on a treadmill, running outside. I don't want them to fall over or run out of breath and oxygen and injure themselves. Is there anything that you haven't shared that you want to get off your chest, share with my listening audience here today?
Go digital, be curious, and learn. Be curious means you're going to have to ask some dumb questions, which will reveal your ignorance, but that's the only way you learn. You have to go digital. You have no choice. If you're not going digital, all of your competitors are. And as they get better and better, they're going to offer better, faster treatment than you. So you must go digital. You must learn. You must, join some study clubs, get to be good friends with your lab. Get an I if you don't have an iOS scanner, you sure need one. And just start simple, start small, be predictable in what you start with and then expand from there. I mean, these people doing full fixed arch photogrammetry model free cases, they've been doing it a while. So just respect the fact that those guys have been at it for 5 years, 10 years. And if you're just getting started, start with Crown Bridge and then take your journey up from there. But go digital because it's so much better, but you gotta learn, you gotta be curious, you gotta be willing to ask them questions, and it's kinda humbling, right? If you've been in practice for 20 years in analog process, you're an expert of analog, like, for sure. Good for you. Analog the analog sun is setting.
Yeah,
Like,
I
so
I
I
love
but
that close, right? So it's start where you're at on the digital journey, but get on the train, right? Because the train is leaving the station. If you want to stay
yeah.
and modernize and really keep up with the trends, start where you're at. And there's help out there. That's the great thing is collaborating with a local lab, and then there's other partners out there to help along. So Rob Laizure with Rebel 3D. Thank you so much for coming on. If they want to reach out and get a hold of you, your company, and how you can help, what's the best way to do so?
rebel3d.com, or my email is rob, at rebel3d.com. Pretty simple.
Perfect. We'll make sure we get that in the show notes. Thank you so much for being a guest on the Two Sleuth podcast. It's been a pleasure. It's been lively. I like when they're lively. Thanks so much, Rob.
All right.
Have a great day.
Awesome, Greg. Thank you.
If you need help with converting lead calls into consultations, closing consults into more full arch cases, or creating a more strategic marketing message and branding for your practice or group, follow me for more tips or reach out to G&A Consult for a discovery call today.